Stealth fighters are the peak of modern military aviation technology, the culmination of decades of research and development, thousands of skilled labor hours, and the combined knowledge of countless world-class engineers. But the time, effort, and cost is more than paid for on the battlefield, with stealth-capable fighters proving to be utterly devastating when deployed in active war zones. Leveraging radar avoidance technology, stealth fighters are able to pick off high-value targets while remaining virtually invisible to enemy air defenses, making them a truly terrifying weapon that can almost single-handedly decide the outcome of a conflict. The F-117 Nighthawk, for example, was pivotal in the First Gulf War, overcoming heavy air defenses around Baghdad to drop a combined 2,000 tons of precision-guided munitions with an 80% success rate. But lest there was any doubt, the challenges of designing and producing an effective stealth aircraft are daunting. While many nations have attempted, or are currently attempting to develop stealth-capable jet fighters, just a handful of militaries have actually managed to produce full-scale, combat-ready versions. Not surprisingly, those nations that have succeeded also happen to have the most well-funded, cutting-edge militaries in the world: the US, Russia, and China. So, on February 2nd, 2013, when a new nation announced it would be stepping into the arena and single-handedly producing a stealth fighter from scratch, you can bet that the world sat up and paid attention. Iran declared it was in the process of developing the cutting-edge F-313, or F-313, and the unveiling of the aircraft sent the international media into a frenzy. Even at a glance, it's clear that the F-313 is something unusual, most prominently because the aircraft is markedly smaller than other comparable designs. With a length of 15.5 meters, that's about 51 feet, and a wingspan of just 8 meters, or about 26 feet, including the downturned wingtips, the F-313 is roughly half the width of the iconic single-seat F-22 Raptor. The F-22 comes in a length of 18.92 meters, that's 62 feet, and a wingspan of 13.5 meters, or 44.5 feet, making the F-313 look positively dainty. Now, in regards to specifics, the F-313 is reportedly made of advanced materials, boasts a very low radar signature, and is capable of carrying an impressive array of armaments. According to the information provided, an F-313 may be equipped with either 6 PL-12 air-to-air missiles for dogfighting, or alternatively may be equipped with a pair of 910-kilogram or 2,000-pound bombs when going after ground targets. It's a pretty impressive armament capability given the aircraft's size, especially since it appears that there is barely enough space under the wings for any armaments at all. More impressive still is that as of 2023, it was announced that the project had reached maturity, but that before going into full production, the F-313 would first be making the transition from a single-seat fighter to an entirely unmanned drone. Today's episode is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. If you're ever on public Wi-Fi, you see that little Wi-Fi symbol, like, oh good, free internet. Well, the chances are that if you're not entering a password, it's not secure. And that means that your information can be visible to bad actors and hackers. But with Surfshark VPN, they encrypt all of the information so you can bank online or check your emails, send messages, whatever you like, without having to worry about being snooped on. That's what Surfshark VPN is all about. Plus, if you're traveling abroad and you've been watching a show on Netflix at home and then you travel somewhere else and you're like, where's that show gone? Why is it not in my app? Often that's because you are in a new region and different platforms can have different restrictions in different regions. With Surfshark VPN, just jump on over to a server in your home country and you'll get that access back just like that. They've got 3,200 servers in over 100 countries, so you're always sure that you can do that. Plus, Surfshark is available on unlimited devices, so everyone in your household can stay protected nice and easily. Plus, they've got 24/7 customer service, so if you run into any problems, they will take care of you. And if for whatever reason you don't like Surfshark, which is insane, because of course you will, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So secure your privacy with Surfshark. Head to surfshark.com/mega. Use the promo code MEGA for an extra 4 months for free. And now back to today's video. Now, the IRIAF, the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force, had previously been recognized as fairly capable, but certainly not capable of developing its own cutting-edge stealth fighter from the ground up. So the unveiling was met with more than a bit of skepticism from international journalists, more so when attendees finally had the chance to examine the aircraft up close. To put it bluntly, the unveiling of the F-313 did indeed cause that media frenzy, but probably not the kind of frenzy that the Iranian government was hoping for. The aircraft, from its curiously small size to its questionable aerodynamics and just about every aspect of its clunky design, has been a point of open mockery by international journalists for years. That the aircraft was unveiled at all has been a point of speculation, with many bewildered that the Iranian government had expected anything else other than outright laughter. But let's be clear before we get into it, we don't know for sure if the F-313 does or doesn't exist as a functional aircraft, but we do know that the evidence seems to lean rather heavily in one direction. Before the imperial state of Iran transitioned into the Islamic Republic of Iran, the US had considered the country one of its closest allies. As a benefit of that relationship, the Iranian military drew heavily from what the US already had achieved, ordering and receiving a vast stock of aircraft considered cutting edge at the time. Aviation hardware that Iran ordered and received from the US includes Grumman F-14 Tomcats, McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs, Northrop F-5 Tiger IIs, Lockheed P-3 Orions, and many, many more. Now, with that being said, it is somewhat debatable as to the state of all of this inventory today, including which hardware has been scrapped and which is even still operational. The reality is that once the Islamic Revolution took place, the US severed all military ties and eventually established an embargo, meaning that although the Iranian military still had the hardware, the country has not been receiving the necessary maintenance parts for a very long time. Various reports say that the IRIAF has done a fairly good job at keeping at least some of the fleet operational and has even been upgrading a portion of the fighters to bring them more in line with foreign standards. But what does all of this have to do with the F-313, you might be asking? Well, you might rightly ask how a military still relying on aircraft bought in the 1970s is able to design and build its own hyper-advanced stealth fighter from the ground up. More to the point, you might draw a few conclusions from remarks made by aviation experts at the international unveiling of the F-313, and we'll get into the specific criticisms a bit later, but for now, let's focus on what Flight Global had to say. Flight Global is an online media company focusing on international aviation news, and upon seeing the F-313, an expert shared a few thoughts. They said, due to the small nature of the F-313, that the Iranian design team had perhaps used the single engine derived from the Northrop F-5 Tigers already in its possession. The expert also said that there were suspicious signs of borrowed elements from the Boeing Bird of Prey prototype and the 1970s-era Lockheed Have Blue. These observations seem to suggest that despite what the local government was perhaps attempting to broadcast, that the Iranian military is still firmly rooted in borrowing and imitating 50-year-old technology. Regardless of comments made by the international media, project manager Hassan Parvena from the IAIO, the Iranian Aviation Industries Organization, insisted that an F-313 prototype had already flown. He put forward a rather controversial, low-quality video as proof, though Israeli newspaper Haaretz was quick to point out that the blurry video showed nothing more than a radio-controlled aircraft. Hassan responded, admitting that the video did indeed only show a pair of small remote-controlled aircraft using propeller and microjet engines, but insisted that the video had only been intended as a proof of concept for the F-313's aerodynamics. The Iranian Minister of Defense, Brigadier General Hossein Deghan, stepped in on February 10, 2013, disputing all derogatory claims made by foreign media. He contested that foreign journalists were lying and that the engine in the F-313 had been tested and was fully operational. He did, however, concede that the aircraft had not yet actually flown, giving the vague date of soon as to when taxi and flight tests would be conducted. It wasn't until March 15th of 2017 that Brigadier General Hossein finally announced that the F-313 was ready for flight tests. Notably, on April 15th of that same year, it was reported that the prototype had successfully conducted taxi tests, demonstrated in a video showing the aircraft moving up a runway. The video also revealed that a number of significant changes had been made to the design, perhaps in answer to specific international criticisms. The cockpit had been enlarged, previously having not been big enough to even house a pilot. The single-jet design had been replaced with a dual version, and an FLIR turret, a forward-looking infrared array, had been added to the nose. So it was all seeming promising, with just a maiden test flight left to prove that everything the Iranian military had been working on was worth the time, effort, and money. Now, if you're holding your breath, waiting to hear how the test flight went, well, you'd better exhale now before you pass out. The next time any tangible information was released was February 18th, 2023, with the announcement simply saying that the aircraft was technologically mature, but would be making the transition to an unmanned drone before going into production. There was no public demonstration of the aircraft capabilities in the 6 years between. So what exactly is going on here? Is the F-313 capable of flying? Does it have stealth capabilities? Or perhaps a better question is, does it even really actually exist? When the aircraft was unveiled in 2013, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad called the aircraft one of the most advanced fighters in the world, elaborating that the design boasted virtually all of the positive features seen in international designs while suffering few of the setbacks. He also emphasized that the F-313, or Kher F-313, which translates to Conqueror, was a message of peace, friendship, and brotherhood, not intended as a threat to anyone. Foreign media, meanwhile, pointed out that the aircraft lacked even the bolts and rivets required to keep the body from flying apart under stress. John Reed from Foreign Policy said, "It looks like the Iranians dumped some rudimentary flight controls and an ejection seat into a shell molded in what they thought were stealthy angles." Andrew Davies of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute was even more ruthless, saying, "It looks like it might make a noise and vibrate if you put 20 cents in it. I can see almost how North Korea gets away with transparent nonsense due to isolation, but Iran has a population that's much more switched on and connected, at least in the cities. I guess a possible explanation is that it plays well in the provinces where people aren't as savvy." A BBC News Persian service journalist, Cyrus Amini, rather pointedly declared that the aircraft looks like a cheap copy of the American F-22. But was the international media just being facetious, or were there really problems with the aircraft? Fly Global pointed out that the canopy appeared to be made of plastic, the air intakes were unfeasibly small in comparison to the intended purpose of the aircraft, and that overall the F-313 was nothing more than plastic parts attached to a flight platform. The reporter added that the cockpit and ejection seat did indeed seem real, but that overall the absurdly small design did not demonstrate any of the necessary aviation physics to make the fighter feasible. The expert continued that according to the airspeed indicator, the F-313 had a stall speed of just 130 km an hour in landing configuration and a never-exceed speed of 480 km an hour, numbers much more in line with a small propeller aircraft and nowhere near what a best-in-the-world fighter jet should be capable of. Aviation journalist David Sensiotti simply stated that the aircraft had implausible aerodynamics and the cockpit had simply been borrowed from a small private plane, a Cessna 152 most likely, which would explain why the indicated airspeeds did not correspond with a jet fighter, but instead a Cessna 152. In the Times of Israel, meanwhile, aerostatics expert Tar Imbar did not mince words when he said, "It is not a plane, because that's not how a real plane looks. Iran doesn't have the ability to build planes. Plain and simple." Now, the version of the F-313 recorded moving up a runway in 2017 was markedly better than the first, exhibiting a design much more in line with something that might actually fly. So perhaps the version shown at the unveiling was simply a mock-up, a basic prototype intended to communicate a project still very much in the planning stages. Perhaps, though, there were still glaring signs that the improved version was still nothing more than an empty shell. As noted by military analyst Galen Wright, the tire pressure requirements printed on the side of the fuselage were incorrect, 50 pounds per square inch. The tire pressure for comparable designs like the F4 and F15 are 265 and 305 psi respectively. So, either the information printed on the F-313 was wrong, rather concerning for what must be a multi-million-dollar piece of hardware, or if the F-13 was actually rolling on 50 psi tires, it must have been almost entirely hollow. So, the primary question, can we conclusively say that the F-313 doesn't work, can't fly, and really is nothing more than a propaganda stunt? Well, probably yes. But the more interesting question is why? Why did the Iranian government do this, and how could they have thought that anyone would possibly buy it? Given a complete lack of real information from the Iranian government, we can only speculate as to what's really going on here. But Andrew Davies probably already gave us the most plausible answer. I guess a possible explanation is that it plays well in the provinces where people aren't as savvy. The F-313, perhaps dreamt up by a propaganda department separate from the Iranian military and the genuinely capable IRIAF, was likely never intended to impress international audiences. It was possibly meant only as an ill-conceived propaganda stunt for the least savvy local populace, intended to demonstrate how technologically advanced the local military is. The Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, or IRIB, is the solitary official news outlet in the country, well known to broadcast only what has been explicitly approved by the government. As you would expect, the news that is approved is virtually all propaganda that praises the local government while accusing foreign nations of misinformation and lies. More to the point, the Iranian government is known to engage in widespread media manipulation. In August 2018, Twitter suspended 770 Iran-based accounts for repeatedly breaking online policies, the details of which have been shared on the Election Integrity Hub. The suspended accounts were found to be targeting Arabic Twitter users with social engagement as a means to share links to pro-Iran Arabic language websites. The accounts even imitated news outlets in an effort to build credibility for the region. So it's fairly conclusive that Iran is no stranger to targeted propaganda, suggesting that the F-313 was likely a similar effort to impress certain people in the local populace. If you're thinking this seems futile, given that locals must have read the international mockery online, well, maybe not. Iran has also actively been curating online news since 2011 with the establishment of the so-called Iranian Cyber Police, or the Police for the Sphere of the Production and Exchange of Information. All of this suggests that while internationally the F-313 was seen as an embarrassing joke, it was likely perceived locally as a technological triumph, at least by certain groups. This is all, once again, just speculation. And who knows, maybe we'll all be eating our words when the F-313 is revealed as a working drone in a few years. I wouldn't put any money on it, though. Meanwhile, you can get your hands on a genuine F-313 model at various hobby shops.